Hello, day drinkers. Long time no see. I'm so glad to be back. I hope you guys are having a beautiful summer, a restful summer. Hope you're reading a lot of great books and getting some vacations in. If you have never been here before, welcome to Day Drinking with Authors. It is an interview series in which I pick a book and the author picks a drink and we discuss both. And it's basically my two loves, which is embarrassing, but true. Tonight's book is a debut novel, Never Saw Me Coming, and it actually comes out at the beginning of next month, the beginning of September. And so this is like a very special sneak peek that day drinkers are getting. And I got to tell you, if you like thrillers, look at that. That's gorgeous. I mean, it's gorgeous. Can you see her face in there too? This book, it keeps you guessing. It really keeps you guessing. So before we bring Vera on, I am going to read the back cover copy because my mother likes that. Again, look at that cover. Meet Chloe Severy. I'm sure I mispronounced that. I'm so sorry. She's a freshman honor student, a legging-wearing hot girl next door who also happens to be a psychopath. Her hobbies include yoga lattes, frat parties, and plotting to kill Will Bachman, a childhood friend who grievously wronged her. Chloe is one of 7 students at her DC-based college who are part of an unusual clinical study for psychopaths, students like her who lack empathy and can't comprehend emotions like fear or guilt. The study, led by a renowned psychologist, requires them to wear smartwatches that track their moods and movements. When one of the students in the study is found murdered in the psychology building, a dangerous game of cat and mouse begins, and Chloe goes from hunter to prey as she races to identify the killer and put her own plan into action. She'll be forced to decide if she can trust any of her fellow psychopaths, and everybody knows you should never trust a psychopath. I mean, just reading that, you're like, you have no idea what's going on, what's going to happen in this book. It's amazing. So let's bring in our author, Vera Kurian. Hello, Vera.
Hi.
Thank you so much for joining us. I have to tell you this story about reading this book. So I go on a reading vacation at the beginning of every summer with some friends of mine from high school. Basically, we sit around a pool and we read for 10 hours.
Oh, that sounds nice.
I mean, it's pretty delicious. So I have this book with me. Your publisher sent me an ARC, and one of my friends is a high school English teacher, voracious reader, and the other one reads thrillers relentlessly. And she is very smug about always like knowing when the killers. And so I was reading this book and I kept kind of exclaiming, and they were like, we got to read that book. And I was like, yeah, I'll loan you the book, but you got to pre-order the book or like request it from a library, like give me your part. And they did. And then they read the book. And the high school English teacher had no idea. Like the ending came and he was like nope, that was not on my top 10 lists of what was going to happen. And my smug thriller reader, she was like a third of the way through and she's like, I think I know. And I was like, you don't know. You don't know. So I have to ask you, did you know when you started writing the book how this would end?
Yeah, I did actually. I got the idea for both the setup and the ending at like right away. And if you look it's not on my blog yet. I just started an Instagram account. I don't know what I'm doing, but I posted a reel that has a picture of a Facebook post I made where I was talking to some writer friends like, hey guys, I had an idea for a book, and basically said like the entire book, including the ending. So I knew I was working towards that. I kind of feel like, I don't know, maybe the ending is something you can figure out, but it's the whole thing of like, if you're writing a mystery, some percentage of the readers are going to figure it out, and some of them aren't. And you can't make it impossible because that's not fair, and you can't make it too easy.
Because that's fun.
Yeah, and I think the like greatest compliment I ever got about this book is one of the first readers said like, yeah, I was kind of interested to know who did it, but really I was more interested in knowing how these characters would figure it out who did it. And I was like, yes, that's what I want.
The characters, it's, the language around the book is it's a character-driven thriller, which I'm always like, what does, like, they're all character, aren't they all? But this really is like but we will talk about this, but we'll talk about characters in POV in a second. But so you had the idea about a group of students in a psychopath study group.
Mm-hmm.
How long ago did you have that idea? Like, how long has this book been in your life?
I think, wow, the date is on that post. I think I had the idea in 2018, and I wrote the book very fast. And then I started querying it, which is what you do to get an agent. And then I did a major rewrite, and then got an agent November 2019. And then we sold the book like during the pandemic. So it was pretty fast.
Yeah, really. And you haven't had to do any of the rewriting during the pandemic, which is like,
I did. I think we did edits with my editor, which actually weren't that heavy, luckily. So it was like actually kind of nice to have like homework to do. It was like, I have to get this done, rather than just watching like 20 hours of old seasons of The Bachelor or something. Not that I haven't done that too.
All the Bake Off shows from every single country. So, and, you know, one of the questions that I really like asking authors, particularly debut authors, like, what was the hardest part in this process?
That's interesting. I think, you know, I could say like some editorial aspect of, you know, we kept getting a couple from both my agent and my editor were like, oh, I feel like the stakes for Andre aren't really clear. And well, the stakes are that he doesn't want to get killed. And then actually it was more that the stakes were like needing to feel Andre's character in your gut for a variety of reasons. But I actually think the hardest part came before I wrote the book, where I have been a writer for so long, and this is the third book I queried and like the sixth novel I've written. And I've had the like slow tortoise and the hare kind of writing career where I've just been rejected many, many, many times before I ended up getting something that looks like it'll be successful. Yeah, so, I mean, there were many times I thought I'm going to give up. Or I remember when I wrote this book and I was querying, I was like, well, if I can't get an agent for this book, there's no book I can write that I can get an agent for.
I mean, this idea is so high concept and it's so big. Did it feel different when you had it? Like, do you understand why some of those other books might not have been so good when this one is? Like,
yeah, when I was writing the book, it felt very viral. I wrote it so quick because it had that viral feel, and like the initial readers, like one friend was like, I was reading this at work and I couldn't stop. And I knew I sort of had a feeling like I know the thriller genre really well, and I know why this book stands out. And I think it was because it was filling a hole that I wanted filled. Because they say like write the book that you don't see in the market, and like there are a variety of things about this book that I wanted to see in the book, and I felt like that would attract, you know, an agent, an editor, and eventually readers.
Psychopaths being hunted by other psychopaths is, I mean, it sells itself. So the setting of this book, which is academia and then sort of psychotherapy, that might not be the right word. You have a lot. This is your wheelhouse in a lot of ways.
Yeah. So the university is fictional. It's like John Adams University, which is kind of making a joke about George Washington University, which is in DC. But I wanted to create my own campus, and like I love college novels. Like I could read like all of them. The idea of hosting a mystery at a college, which I think like such a nice setting. And then my background as a psychologist, so I'm quite familiar with psychology departments and like big studies and running experiments and also like the content of the psychology that's in the book. So I wanted to include that in both a way that was like fun, but also in a way that was like a reasonably accurate interpretation of how things would be.
You know, and it's such a balanced novel. And I mean, the pages do turn, but like, you know, the kids in the study have to like come and like sort of perform tests, you know, and you have a couple of them and it always like furthers the plot. There's always some sort of thing that's happening. And I was like, I want more. I was like, I want more of those. And then you're like, I want more. Like all of it felt like I could have read each parts of this novel for another 100 pages, which is,
nice. Yeah, and I did question like, oh, how many of these little experiments can I include? Because they weren't necessarily like important, but they're really fun, and they're each very classic social psychology experiments in real life. And eventually, I will be blogging about each of them and kind of like the history of a lot of people will recognize some of those experiments.
Yeah.
And it's actually fun to think of how Chloe would perform in each of them.
So you have, this is very much in your wheelhouse. You have a lot of experience, but I've got to say, like, is your Google search history like ridiculous?
No, I think a lot of what I read
in an MRI.
Yeah, so the MRI thing, I know a couple like MRI researchers, so I like asked them about it. I was like, "How realistic is this?" And they laughed a lot, and they were like, "That could happen."
You're like, "That's all I need."
I think the like only weird thing I Googled was about garroting someone and exactly how long that takes. Other than that, I think my search history is all right.
So it's also kind of interesting to me, and I don't read a lot of college set novels. I don't know why. That's like but both the study part of it, the kids being in the study, and them being on a university, which made the world wide. Chloe had friends, she had a roommate, she had this social life, but it also made it feel really kind of claustrophobic at the same time.
Yeah. Yeah, I like the idea. I mean, that's kind of how college felt, right? Yeah, I had my close-knit group of friends, but then I would go out to classes or go out to clubs or whatever. But I kind of like that insular feel of like the book is taking place on campus, right? So all of the clues and the mystery for the most part are on campus. And I think people are drawn to like boarding school novels and college novels for that insular feeling of being part of a place. Place is a really important thing for me as a writer. Like I drew a map like early on in the process.
Yeah, I'm sure that must have helped for sure.
Yeah. I wanted if I can find it here, get it. I have I have my own bullet journal.
I love that Chloe was a bullet journaler.
Oh yeah. Well, she strikes me as someone that had creepily nice handwriting. Yeah. So there's water spilled on it, but you can see I have a campus map of everything, which is and then it helps me picture things exactly like so because I think of it as a real place. Then I think it comes off as a real place of like I'm not describing where the student activity center is in the wrong location because I know where it is.
And there is a wrong location when you know where it is. Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
So the real standout for me of this book, and I mean it's what everybody's going to talk about, are the characters and your POV choices. Mm-hmm. So we're going to work very hard. There aren't going to be spoilers.
Yes.
Maybe a few tiny spoilers, but only that will get you more and more excited. But you are in the headspace of three characters, and Chloe's one of them, and she's a psychopath.
Yeah.
And she's in first person, and everybody else is in third. Why that?
Yeah, I think that to me, it felt like POV was an underutilized way of having dramatic irony, which would create tension. So if I have this first person narrator, then we're kind of claustrophobically in her head. We know what she's thinking, what she's doing. But then through the other points of view, either the major third person points of view or the minor ones, you see the characters reflected off each other. So we see Chloe and she's scheming, and then we see her therapist's perspective of her. And then, but we're actually realizing, oh, we know why she's asking this question for kind of nefarious reasons. So it creates another way of shining a light on characters, but then also, one character doesn't know what another character is thinking, or, there's a long period of time where this third point of view doesn't actually know, like, is Chloe involved in the murders or not? And like, that person wouldn't know. So I wanted to use point of view in a way that was interesting, as opposed to just like, I think a lot of thrillers are just like a straight first person, I'm trying to figure out a mystery, as opposed to people reflecting back on each other. And also, especially since they're psychopaths, everyone has a motivation when they're thinking or doing anything, when they're talking to each other. you have two opposing motivations. So I think point of view is a really good way of doing something intriguing.
One of the things that I kind of kept thinking about, that Chloe was in first person and these other characters were in third, is, I mean, I'm trying to think of how to, you worked very hard to both humanize and normalize the conditions that these people have, these characters have. And one of the characters in third person in particular is a psychopath, but had learned some real coping strategies, had kind of like was a success story within this, still a bit of a nightmare, but had come a long way. And I thought, I thought that was like almost an interesting way of showing that he wasn't filtering everything always through himself, that he had some wider empathy. I liked that part of that.
Yeah, and I wanted each of the psychopaths in the book to be completely different. And they also had different perspectives on their diagnosis. Like Chloe clearly doesn't care about her diagnosis, doesn't think there's anything wrong with her. If anything, she thinks she's superior to other people. Right. And then you have the character you're referring to, who I think is kind of tragic. There's something tragic about that character and their desire to be better and often failing. And then you have that, kind of other peripheral psychopaths that, one probably doesn't care at all about the program or anything and just wants to be left alone. So I really wanted to show, like, just because someone has a diagnosis doesn't mean they're all the same. They're all completely different with different perspectives on that aspect of their mind.
Yeah, it's interesting, the truths that they decided to tell other people, like the things that they were honest about, and then the things that they would never really be honest about. And I thought that was like, it was so clear. And one of the things that I was really taken with is that every, wanting to write every psychopath, that has their own diagnosis and their own feeling about it and all of that. When you were writing those scenes in those POVs, did you have like every character has this one goal? Like every scene is about this one goal. And did you know that in every scene?
Yeah, I actually literally mapped it out for every scene. No matter how many characters, it was what does this person want from this conversation or whatever. This person's trying to, especially when the like triumvirate gets together, you have three characters. Chloe will be trying to convince this person this thing and the other person that thing. And then everyone's doing their own kind of thing. But because that's how actual people are, they're not mindlessly having conversations where you're just info dumping onto me and I'm asking you open-ended questions. That's not how conversation actually works. So I was very careful to mapped out everyone's motivation per scene. And then I also generally have a rule where there cannot be a scene where nothing happens. With the exception of chapter 2, nothing happens in chapter 2, but that was on purpose.
That's such a, like, when you say it out loud, you're like, well, yeah, of course. But I mean, how many scenes have you written where nothing happens?
Yeah, there has to be a clue drop or something, with the exception of chapter 2, which is kind of a risk that I took that I think is fine.
You also tie in this other, so you've got this clinical study, you've got the university setting, and then you also tie in like a true crime element.
Yeah.
Right. Again, not giving anything away, but one of the main characters is involved in this old case of an awful serial killer, and it's part of the throwing everybody's a suspect. It does a great job of that. So how are you a true crime fan? Like, was that fun?
For sure. Yeah. I mean, the TV shows, the podcasts, not as many books, but yeah, I kind of grew up on that kind of like both true crime and like slasher horror movies, thrillers, that type of stuff.
Just as a real like quick side note, my daughter right now there's a Netflix movie series called Fear Street.
Uh-huh.
I don't know. Yeah,
I grew up with those books. Yeah.
Right. So have you watched the movies?
I watched the first one. Yeah.
So we're getting to the one where the third one's set in 1666 or whatever year it is, and it's so fun. It's just so fun. It's just it's fun to watch her watch it because I read the books and anyway,
Yeah.
total
Yeah, I
side
mean,
note.
I grew up with those like sort of Christopher Pike sort of, books that, I mean, this feels within that vein, you
Totally.
know.
My son walks in and it's a scene where, are they going to kill the main characters? And Mick walks in and he's like, Mom, they never kill the main characters. And then he's like, oh, so it's good fun. Anyway, back to your book. One of the other things that I was really sort of struck with is, was it because every character that you're writing in is in so many ways so self-involved that the filter, you could really only write what they cared about in that scene. You weren't trying to shove other information in because they could only
Yeah.
care about what they cared about, which was
Well,
themselves.
yeah, I felt like with Chloe in particular, she's so focused on one thing, but she's also, despite being a really intelligent person, she's not self-aware at all. And to write in first person about a character who's not self-aware, you need to do it in such a way that the reader picks up on it, even though the character you're writing doesn't. So I think I accomplished that, but it was sort of hard to do.
Yeah, I could imagine as you're writing, as you're spending so much time in that person's headspace, I can imagine trying to make her, as a self-aware human, like that would be a hard filter to write through.
Yeah. We're not similar in any respect. So, yeah.
So was it fun at sort of creating your own true crime serial killer?
Yeah. I mean, I was thinking about the kind of like classic, serial killers like Ted Bundy and like BTK and like Green River, all of those, and setting that in DC and kind of thinking about how that would have played out back then, and who would have been investigating it. And DC is the sort of place where you probably could get away with something like that. And that there's a population of people, and I'm one of them, where you have this morbid obsession with serial killers. And is that kind of weird and wrong?
I don't know, but that population's growing, so it's not that
Yeah.
weird. And if it's wrong, it's a bunch of us.
I don't know why. I mean, they say, especially during the pandemic, that people were really drawn towards true crime and horror, that there's something like weirdly comforting about it. And I mean, I definitely watch horror movies once or twice a week during the shutdown.
And I don't know what it is, because in so many of those true crime things, there's no happy ending, right? There's no, like that closure doesn't often happen. And I wonder,
yeah, it's haunting to know, to think, oh, I'll never know who the Zodiac killer was. I hate it,
Yeah. So my friends on my reading vacation, they had one question for you, which is this going to be a series?
Oh man. So I don't know. I think it's not impossible. It's not likely that the next book I write is a sequel to this, but I just think that people really love the characters so much, and it just, the setting lends itself. And I don't know if you heard that there's a film TV deal. So
What?
if yeah, well, it already happened. I don't know if it'll actually turn into a TV show, but they're interested in making it a TV show. And if that happens, well, I mean, there's other things in play. But yeah, they pretty much, before we had kind of signed the deal, Hollywood got their hands on it, and then
oh my gosh, congratulations!
Yeah, so it was really cool. Yeah, all of this happened in like June, July of last year. So,
and it's got to feel like, I mean, the trad publishing wheels move really slowly. So you celebrated this stuff, ages ago, and now you're finally at the point where you can sort of talk about it.
Yeah, you have to keep secrets for so long. It's really frustrating. And then the month before the book comes out, everything happens. Yeah.
Yeah.
Sorry?
It's an indie pick as well?
Yeah, I made the Indie Next list, the September one, which, I mean, I was obsessively checking Edelweiss to see like how many votes do I have. But yeah, so that's extremely flattering because I know what books are coming out in September. So I'm very excited and happy with the support this book has gotten from independent booksellers and also libraries. Lots of library support. Yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, it reads like it could be a television show, and I would like Chloe to solve more murders and create more mayhem.
Yeah, I think if you, I don't know if you ever watched the TV show Veronica Mars, but
Oh
it
yeah.
had a, yeah, like season 3 was in college, and it was like, oh, I would have just stayed here forever, watching college murder setups, and I can see her getting into so much trouble, and people being like, everywhere you go, murder seems to follow you. And she would just
She's like,
sorry.
yeah, I know, I do it.
Yeah. She's such a lovely character.
So what are you working on now? Are you like, I mean, you're about to go into release, pandemic's hitting hard again. Is it impossible to even try to?
Yeah. So the publicity stuff has taken up so much of my time, but during the downtime where after we'd finished edits before all the stuff started happening, I was working a lot on essentially plotting out another novel, plotting it out, working on characters, all of the pre-writing sort of stuff. So I did a lot of that during the downtime, but I actually haven't been like writing fiction for a while because I am having to write like blog posts and PR things, and that's kind of eaten up a lot of my time.
Yeah, it's two very different brains.
Yeah, I mean, being a traditionally published author is you shift over from being a writer to being a all-around marketing, PR personality, social media. It's a whole other ballgame.
Are you enjoying any of that? I mean, it's its own. I mean, there are a lot of authors who really love it and excel at it. Are you?
Yeah, I mean, I like interviews and stuff. I like talking to people about books. The social media stuff, I feel, I don't know, does that have a dark side? Like, it is very addictive.
Is it all a dark side?
Yeah, and I feel like maybe a few months after the book comes out, I'll kind of maybe take a little respite from it because I don't want to keep checking my phone all the time. I want to be living life and writing and stuff and reading.
Right. Well, you need a reading vacation is what you need.
Yeah, well, normally when I do a beach vacation, I bring a bunch of books on my Kindle and just blow through them. But I don't know when I'll get my next beach vacation.
I know. It doesn't seem to be ending. I started this podcast at the very beginning because I had a book out and I couldn't travel to support it. And so I think for like a few months, because there was nothing else to do, and I was like, I can interview 2 authors a week, and I never would have imagined that we'd be here past a year.
Right.
It's bananas. Anyway, it's bananas. But I really do appreciate you being here and taking before the giant onslaught comes. Everybody out there never saw me coming. Go get it. You won't regret it. It's going to be the book everybody's talking about in September. I really do believe that.
Thank you.
And everybody out there, stay safe, get the vaccine, read a book, have a drink. Good night, guys.
Bye.